When you work at a theme park, especially one like Walt Disney World, you're going to learn things there that you wouldn't learn anyplace else. Here's 8 of the things that I learned. Working at a theme park can be an amazing job, an amazing adventure, but you're constantly learning new things. And some of the things you learn, you would not expect to learn. Some of them are fun, some of them are great and will help change the course of your life, and a few of them are even just plain weird and strange. Here's 8 of the ones that I learned along the way working at Walt Disney World as a PhotoPass photographer. One of the very first things I learned, every park at Walt Disney World has kind of a code name among the cast members. As a good example, everybody knows Magic Kingdom, and you might call it Magic Kingdom or MK for short. But then when it comes to, say, Disney's Animal Kingdom, almost all the cast members I talk to, we refer to it as DAK, which is DAK, Disney's Animal Kingdom abbreviated. So rather than say the whole long Disney's Animal Kingdom or Animal Kingdom, we just said DAK. Another park that gets a rather unusual name, sort of, Disney's Hollywood Studios. Now, when I worked there and I started, it was still called Disney's MGM Studios. And there are a lot of cast members who called it MGM. Well, once it changed names, that started to fall out of fashion, but a lot of the people who'd been there for a while still called it MGM. Well, then, of course, we get Hollywood Studios, but calling it Hollywood really didn't work either, because it wasn't in Hollywood, California. If we said Hollywood, we may be referring to the main company headquarters. Most cast members just plain called it Studios. Yes, we knew there was Universal Studios down the way, but if we were talking about that for some reason, we would call it Universal. Studios meant Disney's Hollywood or MGM Studios. Where are you based? I'm over at Studios today. The one that was probably most interesting was Epcot. If you read Disney history, everybody knows that for Walt, Epcot stood for Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. This was Walt's dream community, dream city. But as cast members began to work at this park, it actually ended up with a different name completely for cast members. For many of the ones that I talked to, they really felt that Epcot stood for Every Person Comes Out Tired, because it was so huge. It is still the Disney park with the largest walking area for guests of any park. Yes, technically Animal Kingdom is larger because it has the savannas and animal areas, but if you want the places that just the guests can go, Epcot is the biggest park. And yes, after you've been there for a day, everybody's tired. However, if you talk to some of the really old timers who had been there, and they understood what it was like in the first 15, 20 years, it actually had a completely different acronym. It was still Epcot, but for them, it was Extreme Polyester Costumes of Torture. Yeah, just think about that. Makes you itch. The second thing I learned, and you hear about this some outside the company, but it really becomes true when you work for Disney, is that it has its own language, its own words for everything that you do. Everything is framed as if it is a big production, a big play, a big drama. Your employees aren't employees. They're cast members. The visitors or customers, they're guests because you are there to make them feel welcome and a part of the play. When you are actually out in the parks working, you're on stage because you are performing for the guests. If you step off stage to take a break, well, now you're off stage. And you could actually be off stage as an employee in the parks. If you're there on your day off and you are a guest that day, yeah, you're a guest, but you're also an offstage employee because you were no longer in the costume. However, if you were working and you step off stage to take a break, well, you're probably going backstage. And that's where the break rooms and everything is. All your maintenance rooms and support places, they're backstage as opposed to on stage. And it affects how you deal with guests because you're performing. It affects how you interact. And it even includes various things like learning the Disney point. And yes, it becomes habit forming. I still, a lot of times, just naturally point with 2 fingers, especially if I'm a theme park and I'm answering questions or giving directions. It just comes right on out, and there you go, and oh, whoops. So you do learn a lot of things like that it's a whole new language and lingo that you pick up without even trying. The third thing I learned, and you see this happen all the time when you're in the parks, is that trash is everybody's job. Yes, there is a whole custodial department that goes around and picks up the trash cans and empties them and cleans them, and we're very grateful for them. What is amazing is that all the trash you see on the ground, while you have the sweepers who come around and sweep, it's every cast member's job to pick it up. Whether it's a cup, whether it's a wrapper, whether it's a napkin or a piece of paper that got dropped, as long as it isn't a bodily fluid item, like a used wipe or something like that, it's every cast member's job to pick it up. I've seen the park vice presidents and other high mucky mucks, as they're walking around, if they see something, here comes the Disney scoop, and it's just a quick duck down, pick up, and off you go to throw it away on the way. It becomes habit forming, and everybody does it. Now, they did not expect you to do it with anything that might be contaminated with bodily fluids. That would be the sweepers or custodian's job. So if you saw a napkin that had very obviously been used, or a wipe that could have been used on somebody's face or something like that, we didn't touch that. But for the most part, those were left to custodial, and we might flag one down so they could come get it. But any regular bit of trash or garbage, you'd see any cast member pick it up. One of the other things you learn fairly early on, but that becomes more apparent as you work there, is the parks and the people who work there are not perfect. Disney definitely has some of its issues and other things. However, your job is to try to make it as close to perfect, especially for the guests, as possible. That was our goal as cast members, was to try to achieve perfection, especially for the guest experience. And it was constantly reinforced by Disney. Whether it was in some of the promotions they got, some of the accolades they give for doing a good job. You would have publications backstage, like the Main Street Diary, that would constantly encourage you to do a good job, to please the guests, and here's some great stories of cast members who did. So you were constantly encouraged to make things as perfect as possible for the guests. That meant that if you saw something that was wrong, even if it technically wasn't in your job description, your overall job description was, hey, if you can do something and there's nobody else helping them at that moment, go see what you can do and try to help them out. It's why if I was on Main Street and I saw a kid crying and I didn't know why, well, I might start thinking about, okay, can I go get them an ice cream bar? Can I get them a balloon? Can I help them do something else that might help make the kid happy or the family happy? Is there a problem that I can solve for them? And if I can't solve it, do I know how to find somebody who can solve it? So it was an idea of looking for problems before they actually became big problems. Even little things like if you saw a guest holding up a map trying to figure out where to go, you were taught to walk up and say, hey, can I help you find something or answer any questions for you? Because they obviously are looking for some information. If you saw a guest holding a camera taking a picture of the family, you'd walk up, even though we were photographers and using Disney cameras, hey, let me use your camera, go ahead and get in with them. And that was true for every cast member. You would see all sorts of cast members use guest cameras to help them all get together in the picture. So yes, PhotoPass photographers will use guest cameras. So we were constantly striving to help improve the guest experience. This is where that Disney magic comes in, because we would try to find ways, if we saw an issue, to make it better, to resolve it, to turn it into something good rather than something bad. So that way their memory was, wow, I remember when Disney did this for me. And even other parks do similar kinds of things. Silver Dollar City has a slogan that says, memories worth repeating. And that is essentially what it is it's that same idea that if you see a way to be able to help please a guest, to help make their experience better, to take care of them, do it. Make it a memory that they would love to go back and want to repeat to all their friends and family, as opposed to one that you really wish they wouldn't repeat. One of the crazy ones I learned was to memorize and at least pretend to love all of the Disney songs that they played in the park. That meant when I was working at Magic Kingdom that I had ended up memorizing the whole entire trolley show that they do. Not just the words to the songs, but I actually had memorized many of the dance steps. That meant that if I saw the trolley performing at one end of the street while they were singing and dancing, if I wasn't taking pictures of guests, I may be down at the other end of the street singing and dancing along with them, with the same steps and the same song. And now, I didn't sing real loud because I didn't want to scare the poor guests that heard me, but there were a few that shot video of me dancing around on Main Street. It meant memorizing the whole castle show, and yes, singing along with it some, but when they did the castle show, because you had learned it and memorized it and knew every song and every lyric and every line, it also meant that you knew the show well enough that you'd know when they were going to shoot fireworks off for it. And you would try to grab a family and put them in place so that way you could get the picture with the fireworks, because that was cool. It meant things that would drive my family a little bit nuts, because at Hollywood Studios we had the High School Musical show that would roll down the street. Yes, I memorized every song that they did in the High School Musical shows, and actually watched the movie so I would have an idea of what on earth that thing was. Yeah, my family was kind of like, why are you watching High School Musical? Well, it's my job, and because my job has totally warped me, I actually enjoy the music. So you would find yourself listening to and singing and enjoying music that otherwise you might not. Here's another one. The things that you see people leave behind and lose at Disney would amaze you. And some of them would have you really shaking your head. I mean, we're talking thousands of cell phones every year. Not just ones that are stolen. That happens occasionally. But the vast majority of cell phones that people lose, they dropped out of their pocket, it got lost on a ride, they left it behind somewhere. Last number I heard was over 6,000 cell phones a year that Disney recovers. These are the ones that actually get sent to property control and are trying to be reunited with their owners. Would you believe 18,000 rings that people wear? Some of them, I'm sure, are engagement rings. Ooh, can you imagine losing your engagement ring at Disney? You'll have 100 pairs of sunglasses or more almost every day. Just think about all those sunglasses, 100 pairs a day? What do you do with all those things? People would lose crazy stuff. Like there are records of people having lost a glass eye, artificial limbs, wheelchairs being left behind. Not Disney chairs, their own private wheelchairs and crutches, cameras. I had a friend buy a very nice several $100 camera lens through property control for about $75 because nobody claimed it. Which kind of brings up what happens to all this stuff. Because Disney collects so much of it. Well, they try to reunite it with the owners. They get reports of what it is, look through the files of lost and found that people have claimed, and if they can match it up with the owners, they send it back to them. They try their best to reunite things, and it is amazing the things that people get returned to them that they had completely forgotten or lost. Disney is awesome with that, but just with the huge amount, they can't possibly do all of it. So one of two things happens to them. They're either donated to charity, or they get sent to property control. Property control is basically a store where if they've had something for months, and I think it's 6 months, 9 months, something like that, and they have not been able to match this up with the previous owners, then they will turn a lot of it over to sale to the cast members. Anytime I lost the lens cover for my camera lens, I was always able to go to property control and pick another one up for $0.25. Because they'd have hundreds of them. You would find sunglasses there, cell phones occasionally, cameras, all sorts of cameras, from little $10 instant ones to occasionally you would get expensive DSLRs. Who loses a DSLR camera at Disney and doesn't try to get it back? But some people did. Strollers. Oh my goodness, strollers by the hundreds. You'd come up out of property control and you'd see tons of the little folding ones, which people will buy those sometimes just for the trip, but you would also see expensive 2-seat strollers and crazy stuff that people would lose. That's what happened to it. They either donated it or gave it to property control if they couldn't reunite it with their original owner. After you've been there for a while, it's still magical. People wonder, well, do you start to lose the magic? And yes, there are some people who work at Disney that they've been there long enough that it isn't magical for them anymore. They do kind of start to lose it. But for many of us, it's still magical. I was there 5 years, almost every day working. If I wasn't working, I was often in the parks, either visiting by myself or with my wife and kids and playing. And I still love Disney. I still love going to visit the parks. There's still this magical atmosphere about it that is just incredible. Sometimes you do have to work a little bit harder to preserve the magic and keep that spirit, but I found it easy. All I'd have to do is find a couple kids and go with them. Just watching Disney through their eyes was amazing. For me, it was easy to leave the backstage stuff and, your employment and your job and leave that kind of backstage, and as soon as I stepped out into the parks, all of that doesn't exist anymore. This is Disney and it is awesome. And that's still kind of my attitude today is if I go to a park, yes, I have a good idea of what happens behind the scenes. I know what the employees are like, and so I make sure I always treat the employees well and kindly and gently and try to encourage them and smile and give a good word. But there is still just a magical feeling about it, especially for one like Disney, where you can set aside reality and just pretend you're somewhere else. I love that about Disney, that it is still a magical place. And the last one, and probably the most important thing I learned, people are people, regardless of where they're from, what their culture is, what their religious beliefs are. People all look for the same things. Everybody who comes to Disney is looking for a good time, an escape. They want their kids to be happy. They want their family to be happy. They're looking to have a great time enjoying the experiences and the rides. They love to smile. They love to laugh. They love to play. And it doesn't matter where they're from. Now, they may express it in different ways, talk differently. They may do different things to accomplish that. But when it comes down to it, at the core, every person has the same basic feelings and ideas that they want to be fed, they want to be sheltered, they want to be loved, they want to be taken care of, they want to be able to relax, to have fun, to smile, to laugh, to play, to enjoy their time. And that's what Disney was absolutely awesome at doing. One of the things I loved so much about working there, and so much of it really kind of took even my own core beliefs and allowed me to put them into action, because here are all these people from all around the world, all sorts of cultures and languages, and let's treat everybody the way we would want to be treated. Let's love on them, let's make them happy because it's going to make us happy, and they'll do the same for us later. And I wish that we could capture this whole atmosphere at Disney of setting aside all of the barriers and walls. We've got a time here in society where we're so busy fighting and arguing that we forget to see that there's people on the other side. Whether it's on the internet, whether it's on our political differences, whether it's our cultural differences, whether it's our religious differences. We forget that they are people who have the same basic needs and desires as we do. But I love at Disney that all of those things are set aside, that we still see everybody as people who are worthy of being loved, who are worthy of being treated well. I wish we could take that part of Disney and package it up and distribute it everywhere, so that people would get along better, so that people would listen better, so that people would treat each other better. That's one thing of Disney magic that I wish we could spread. You know, maybe if everybody took a little bit of that magic and tried, it would make things better. And oh yes, the last thing I learned, even the best of us can ask a silly question. But that's a whole nother video for another time. I hope you enjoyed this little look at 8 things I learned while working at Disney. If you did, please don't forget to like the video, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and you would do me a huge favor if you would share the video on your social media and forums and other places that you think people would enjoy it. Thank you so much for all your support. I want to give a huge shout out to my supporters on Patreon. They're my financial backbone that helped me to do so much, and they are a huge blessing. I also want to give a huge shout out to my 6 new patrons that signed on in December. So a huge thank you to Robert Lint, to Mackenzie Taylor, to Cassie Hall, to Peter Matthews, and to Heather Carter. Thank you so much for joining on. And for all of my supporters, there's extra benefits and perks and previews. If you'd like to know more about Patreon, check the link down below. There's also links to my Facebook fan page, the group page, to the Reddit, the Discord, to merchandise, and so much more. Thank you so much again for watching. God bless. All right. This is a new microphone. This is exciting. Ooh. This is 8 things I learned at Disney. We just said DAC. We knew what we meant to say, but we couldn't say it because we were all gibberish. But for them, it's singing along and doing some of the same steps as well. It was that. Gosh, can't talk. I hope you enjoyed this little look at 8 things that I learned while. Go and get this. If you want to know whenever I have a new video out, well, hey, make sure you hit that button right there and subscribe. If you want to see another video right now, well, I've got a great one right here for you. And if you want to be like these wonderful people here and help support me financially on Patreon, well, check out that link right there and it'll take you to it. Thanks so much and God bless.